Hare Krishna, a very warm welcome to all the devotees to our program on Srimad Bhagavatam study. In this program, we are doing a systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the greatest devotional literatures of Vedic canon. And now our journey has reached to the 10th chapter, which is the last chapter of the second canto. We did already the first 7 verses of this chapter in the previous Sunday. In overall, this is our 83rd class. The topic of this, the title of this chapter is Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So, we will do the Mangalacharan first. So, for Mangalacharan, do you remember who was given this?
Yeah, I do it, Prabhuji.
Sorry, Jivan Prabhu, you are doing it?
I'm doing it because
Okay.
I think it is allotted to me. Last week we didn't have the class, so I think it was for me only. The
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjalashalakaya Takshururmilatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dada Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadate Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Gurun Sri Yuta Pada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakatanvitam He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Excellent, Prabhuji. In the previous recitation, you got a little, mistracked, because there is Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam, and then there is also Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha. So from Sahagana, you actually jump.
One telephone call which was I don't know.
Okay.
Continuously
No
coming.
problem. Okay,
Yeah.
so we okay, that is okay. We beg forgiveness to the Lordship for giving our mistranslation or whatever mispronunciation. Anyway, we go to the next part. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now for the recap, we will invite Manish ji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Manish ji, please do the recap. Thank you.
Hare Krishna to all the devotees. So we are starting with chapter number 9 about the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So verses 31 to 39, the Lord speaks Chatushloki and concludes and disappears. So in verse number 37, Lord is telling Brahmaji to follow the conclusion with fixed concentration and mind so that no pride and bondage will disturb you. Because that was one of the questions earlier Brahmaji asked to the Lord. Verse number 38. So finally, after answering all the questions of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam to Brahmaji, Lord Hari now disappears. Here, Prabhupada ji has mentioned the transcendental form as Rupam Atmanu, which means that the absolute truth is with the form and not just like a Brahmajyoti. Because sometimes the other impersonalists think that that there is no form, it is only Brahmajyoti, but in the purport, Prabhupada ji has clearly mentioned this.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
verse 38, the description of the Lord is about Rupam Atmano, right?
Atmano. Yeah, Rupam Atmano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, 39, Prabhu.
Yeah. So on the disappearance of Lord Hari, yeah, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment or the senses of devotees. So here also the word Indriya Arthya has been stated by Prabhupada ji. So Brahma with folded hands begins to recreate the universe, and then with full living entities as it was previously. So here again the word Indriya Arthya means that the objective of all Indriyas or all senses is the Lord himself, Lord Hari.
Okay. So this is something like after speaking the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the Lord finally concludes and takes his leave. He disappears, and then comes the next section. Chatushloki further explained.
Yeah. So verses 40 to 46 is nothing but the expansion of the Chatushloki. But again, here we now go back to the conversation between Narada and Brahmaji, because Chatushloki was spoken between Brahmaji and the Lord. But now we again go back to the conversation between Brahmaji and Narada. So before Brahma started to do the creation, the situation of Lord Brahma is discussed here. So Prabhupada ji talks about the qualities of Brahmaji, because he did lot of tapa and he was following all the regulative principles and he was controlling senses. So Prabhupada ji is emphasizing on importance of self-control, and the best way to do the sense control is bhakti, the devotional service. So that is what again it has been emphasized in verse number 40.
Yeah.
Can we go to yes, Prabhu, saying something?
Yeah. So in this, Brahmaji started to do the creation, and before he did the creation, he had to go very lot of austerities. So that is why Prabhupada is making a important point that for devotional service, austerities are very much needed. Okay. Yes, Prabhu. 41.
In verse 41, we also here it is spoken about the qualities of Narada. So Narada was also a great devotee, and he was always ready to serve his father. So, and he strictly followed all the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, his humbleness, and sense control. Hence, he was qualified for receiving Bhagavatam. He was the perfect devotee, or he was the perfect disciple to receive the Bhagavatam from his father Brahmaji.
Yeah, Brahmaji actually had many sons, but he decided to give it to Narada mainly because of these qualities: the knowledge of Bhagavatam, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So verse 42, Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Lord Vishnu. And then again, as said, Narada was the greatest of all sages and he was greatest of all devotees. So he was the perfect disciple to receive the Bhagavatam from his father.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. Verse 43. So verse 43 also states that Narada also inquired in detail from his father about his great grandfather, Prapitamaha, of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied.
Yeah. Okay.
Verse 44. Yeah. So thereupon, as we know that Brahmaji was also a qualified guru and Narada was a qualified disciple, the Vedic literature Srimad Bhagavatam, which was described by the Lord and which contains these 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father Brahma to his son Narada. So that is how analogy is also given here, Prabhupada ji, that Bhagavatam can be smaller than the smallest and greater than the greatest. So Bhagavatam can be described in 4 verses, or it can be further expanded also beyond 18,000 verses. That is what has been also stated in this purport by Prabhupada ji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So verse 45, now in the succession, the great sage Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam to the powerful Vyasadeva on the bank of river Saraswati. So this is the disciple succession is now going from Lord to Brahmaji, Brahmaji to Narada, Narada to Vyasadeva, then it is to Dev Goswami and all. So this is how the journey is going on.
Very nice.
Verse,
okay.
In verse 46, now again we come back to Shukdev Goswami, who is speaking Bhagavatam to King Parikshit, and now he will also answer how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead. And this all various questions will be then detailed out in the next verses, which will be coming in the next chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. So
Yes.
this is the conclusion of chapter number 9. So here we conclude the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, and then we move further to chapter number 10.
Yes.
Yeah. So chapter 10, again, it is Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And I think we covered 1 to 7 verses in the last class. So as you know, Brahma heard the Bhagavatam in 4 verses from the Lord, and then he asked Narada to expand on them. And now Shukdev Goswami will now do the retailing of expanded Bhagavatam in this due course, and he will answer to the questions raised by Maharaja Parikshit.
Very good.
So coming to verses 1 to 7, so Shukdev Goswami now said that there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following. The first one is the creation of universe, sub-creation, Sarga Visarga. Sarga is the primary creation. That is nothing but your elementary elements, 16 elements like earth, water, ether, fire, and then 5 karmendriyas, 5 sense objects, and mind. Visarga is the secondary creation, that is the interaction of modes of material nature. Second one is the planetary system, that is nothing but the sthanam. It is nothing but to understand about the geography of universe. Third one is the protection by Lord. It is Poshanam, his causeless mercy, or how to maintain the whole universe. Fourth is the creative impetus. The creative impetus is nothing but the desire of fruity work. Then we have the chief of Manus, that is Manavantara, perfect occupational duty. Then we have Ishanukatha, that is the science of God. We need to understand the incarnations of the Supreme Lord and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. Then we have the returning home back to the Godhead, Nirodha, the merging of the living entity with the mystic lying down of Mahavishnu. Once we die, we go back to Mahavishnu. Then it is Mukti. Mukti is nothing but the liberation, permanent situation of the living entity's form, giving up the changeable body. So you come out of the birth and death, cycle of birth and death. That is the liberation. And the last one is the Samam Bonam. Samam Bonam is nothing but the Ashraya, supreme shelter, the cause of creation, the absolute truth, where we need to find our shelter. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So maybe a little bit elaboration on Sthanam. Sthanam actually is, once the creation is there, then the living entities have to be placed accordingly, according to their previous karma and so on. So they are placed in different geographical locations of the planetary system of the whole universe of the creation. Poshanam is when the living entity is there in the material world, the Lord also protects their faith. Like we have this Katha of Ajamil. So Ajamil was a very sinful person, but just because he chanted the name of the Lord Hari at the time of his death, although unknowingly, he was given protection by the Vishnu Dutas. So that is the Poshanam aspect of the Lord. Manvantara actually is the rule of Manus. So our whole time span is divided into different sections, and each section is ruled by different Manus. So one reign of one Manu is known as one Manvantara. So each Manvantara has 71 yugas. Like we have Kali Yuga, we have Satya Yuga, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali Yuga, 4 yugas. 71 such cycles will be ruled by one Manu. And then 14 times there will be there. So there will be 14 Manus overall. And that will make one day of Brahma. Like that, the thing will go on till the 100 years of Lord Brahma. So right now we are in the 7th Manvantara. And the name of our Manu is Vaivasvat Manu. Vivaswan, Vaivasvat Manu. And the first Manu was Swayambhuva Manu. Like that. So I think Rest everything is fine. So we now come to the subject matter of the class today. I'll take you to the right slides. So we will come here. So this was the 7th verse where we discussed about the Ashraya, supreme shelter. Here, yeah, so the supreme shelter is none other than Lord Krishna, and the shloka that is given for explaining the supreme shelter is: He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe, who is also known as Paramatma and Parabrahma. Param Brahma Paramatmiti Shabdyate. Sa Ashraya Param Brahma Paramatmiti Shabdyate. So what the verse is trying to say is that actually the supreme shelter is Lord Sri Krishna, who is also known as Param Brahma and Paramatma. Param Brahma and Paramatma. Why I'm repeating this is because it has a connection with the next verse, the 8th verse. But before we go to the 8th verse, I will just like to give you this table here, which kind of mentions that which of these 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam are discussed in which of the cantos. Like, for example, the topic of Sarga is discussed in Canto 3. The topic of Visarga is discussed in Canto 4. Sarga means primary creation. Primary creation means when the Lord Vishnu creates all the ingredients for Brahmaji to do the secondary creation. So Visarga is secondary creation. Sthanam is discussed in Canto 5, Poshanam in Canto 6, where you will find the story of Ajamil, as I discussed short while ago. Uti is inclination. Inclination means we have proclivity to do something, like we have Varnashram system and all that. So that is discussed in Canto 8. Manvantara topic is discussed in Canto 7. I think there is some mistake here. Oh, I'll check later on. Most likely Manvantara is discussed in Canto 8. Then Ishanu Katha is in Canto 9, Nirodha in 12, Mukti in 11, Ashraya, which is discussed in Canto 10. Ashraya is all about the pastimes of Lord Krishna. So it has, I think, 4 volumes of book, the longest chapter, the longest canto in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Sarga, Visarga, Poshanam, Ashraya, primarily, these are the themes which are discussed in Canto 1 and 2. Now we need to understand that it is not that only Sarga is discussed in Canto 3. There are other topics of Bhagavatam also discussed in Canto 3, but primarily the thrust has been Sarga. Like that, it is applicable to all the other cantos also. In Canto 1 and 2, people might think that since the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam are mentioned only in the end of Canto number 2, the Bhagavatam actually starts from Canto 3 onwards. But it is not like that. Canto 1 and 2 is also part of Bhagavatam. And then you already saw that Sarga, Visarga, Poshanam, Ashraya. There are so many themes of Poshanam. There are so many themes of Lord Krishna's pastimes have been discussed in Canto 1 and 2. So like that, we need to understand. There is another important verse regarding that, which comes in Canto 12, chapter 7, verse 9 and 10. So maybe we need 1 or 2 readers to kind of read the text in the class today.
Hare Krishna
I will be
Prabhu.
there, Prabhu.
So
I'm
I can
also
be there.
available.
Okay, Vrindavaneshwari Mataji is there and Manish ji is there. I think 2 is good. So Vrindavaneshwari Mataji, can you please read this?
Yes, Prabhu. O Brahman, O Brahmana, authorities on the matter understand a Purana to contain 10 characteristic topics: the creation of the universe, the subsequent creation of worlds and beings, the maintenance of living beings, their sustenance, the rule of various manus, the dynasties of great kings, the activities of such kings, annihilation, motivation, and the supreme shelter. Other scholars state that the great Puranas deal with these 10 topics, while lesser Puranas may deal with 5.
So there is a dedicated verse on these 10 topics. And the point that we need to understand is that there are many Puranas. Some of the Puranas are known as Mahapuranas, and the other Puranas may simply be known as Puranas, not Mahapuranas. So the Mahapuranas deal with these 10 topics. And those which are not Mahapuranas but simple Puranas, or the lower or lesser Puranas, may deal with only 5 of them. But these topics are there in the Puranas. In Mahapuranas there are 10 of them, and then in lower Puranas or lesser Puranas there are only 5 of them. So this is some additional information that how various topics of Bhagavatam are appearing in which of the cantos, and how uh, uh, generally the Puranas cover these topics only. In Mahapuranas all 10 are taken up. In lesser Puranas only 5 are taken up. Okay, now we start with our 8th verse of chapter number 10. So Mataji, please read.
Yes. Bhagavatam's 10 subjects. The covering on the jiva, known as subtle sense organs, Adhyatmic Purusha, is not different from the presiding deities of the senses, Adi Daivat Purusha. The division of subtle sense organs, Adhyatmic Purusha, and the sense deities, Adi Daivat Purusha, is not different from the gross organ, Adi Bhautik, of the material body.
Yeah. Now, if you read this verse is very, very cryptic, very technical, and sometimes difficult to understand, because previously from verse number 1 till verse number 7, a very smooth theme was flowing. What are the 10 topics of Bhagavatam? And just after the finishing the 10 topics of Bhagavatam explanation, this verse comes which says, the covering on the jiva, known as the subtle sense organ, is not different from the presiding deities of the senses. The division of the subtle sense organ and the sense deity is not different from the gross organ of the material body. Sounds, and then in the verse, if you read the verse, there are names like Adhyatmic Purusha, Adhidaivik Purusha, and then Adi Bhautik Purusha, like that. So this is kind of confuses that how uh, with a smooth flow of thought of 10 topics, how all of a sudden Shukdev Goswami started discussing about covering on the jiva, 3 type of covering, like Adhyatmic Purusha covering or Adi Daivik Purusha covering, what is Adi Bhautik Purusha covering, like that. And what do you mean by Adhyatmic Purusha or Adi Daivik Purusha or Adi Bhautik Purusha? So this is something which is a little confusing. Now, in order to explain this, we need to go back to verse number 7 once again. And in verse number 7, we understood about the ashray. Ashray means the supreme shelter. And also in the previous class, we discussed that all the other 9 topics of Bhagavatam are only meant to serve this 10th topic, which is the ashray. Like, for example, if you go to the temple, in the temple we have the deities at the main altar, and around the deities everything is arranged mainly for serving the deities. Like, for example, there is a focus lamp which is throwing its light on the face of the deity just to make their darshan very glamorous, very elaborate. And there is a lot of service that is centered around the deities. In fact, if you keep on analyzing this, you will realize that the whole existence of that temple is mainly because of the deities. The rooms in the temple, the quarters in the temple, the pujari room, the kitchen, everything is actually mainly to focus on the service of the deities. So that is what the ashray, the topic, the 10th topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is like. Ashray is all about Lord Krishna. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, every other topic, starting from Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam, Uti, Manvantar, Ishanukatha, all these topics ultimately are meant to understand, meant to take us to a greater understanding or the proper understanding of the topic of Lord Sri Krishna. That is the idea. And in this definition of Ashraya, what is mentioned is that Lord Sri Krishna is the source of everything. And this Lord Krishna is also known as Paramatma and Parabrahma. Is also known as Paramatma and Parabrahma. So if that is understood, what now Shukdev Goswami is doing in verse number 8 is he's trying to say that Lord Krishna, who is also the source of Paramatma and Parabrahma, now in verse number 8 and 9, Shukdev Goswami is trying to say that this Paramatma actually is also the ashraya of the Adhyatmic Purusha. Paramatma is also the ashraya of the Adi Daivik Purusha. Paramatma is also the ashraya of the Adi Bhautik Purusha, like that. But in fact, he says like this: the Paramatma is the ashraya of the Jiva, and the Jiva is the ashraya of the Adhyatmic Purusha, Adi Daivik Purusha, and Adi Bhautik Purusha, like that. So you need to have a very clear understanding of this hierarchy, and then we will start to explain what does it mean, what he's trying to say. So first of all, he's saying Krishna is the supreme shelter. Krishna is also the shelter of Paramatma and Parabrahman. And then in verse number 8, he's saying that this Paramatma is the shelter of the Jiva, the soul. And the Jiva is the shelter of the Adi Bhautik Purusha, Adhyatmic Purusha, and Adi Daivik Purusha. If that understanding at the moment is clear, then maybe I can go on elaborating further. Vrindavaneshwari Mataji, is that clear?
I think so. You explained, Prabhuji, that Krishna is the supreme shelter, and all jivas take shelter unto Krishna. And Jiva gives shelter to Adi Adhyatmic Purusha, Adi Bhautik Purusha, Adi Daivik Purusha.
Correct. So actually, one small correction here. Krishna is the shelter of certainly the supreme shelter, but the way the verse have been designed, verse number 8 and 9, it talks about Paramatma is the shelter of the Jiva, and the Jiva is the shelter of the Adhyatmic, Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik.
But we were told that Krishna is also known as Paramatma, so I deliberately left it out.
Yeah, he's also known as Paramatma and Parabrahma because Krishna actually is the supreme ultimate shelter, who is further giving shelter to Paramatma feature and giving further shelter to the Parabrahman feature. So Brahman also rests on Krishna, Paramatma feature also rests on Krishna.
Yes.
Not the other way around.
Yes.
Okay. But here, just to explain things, Shukdev Goswami is giving an example that Paramatma is the shelter of Jiva, and Jiva is the shelter of Adhyatmic, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik. So this Ashraya Tattva is further explained in verse number 8 and 9. Here he gives an example how Paramatma is the Ashraya Tattva. Now, Paramatma's jurisdiction is primarily only restricted to the material world. Paramatma feature doesn't exist in the spiritual world. Is that concept clear, Vrindavaneshwari Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Paramatma feature doesn't exist in the spiritual world. Its jurisdiction is only to maintain the material world.
Material world, right? So now, because he's giving this all the explanation in terms of sarga, visarga, and all that, so he's specifically mentioning it to Paramatma feature. And then in Bhagavad Gita 10.42, where the Lord explains all his vibhutis, vibhutis. So he says that Vishtabhyam idam kritsnam ekam shena sthito jagat. That all these vibhutis that you see are only a spark of my splendor.
Yes.
It is only ek amsha, only one small spark of my whole splendor. With single fragment of myself, I pervade and support the entire universe. So this is what he's trying to explain here, how he's giving the ashraya to everything else. He's giving ashraya to everything else. And then he's explaining this in terms of Paramatma is the shelter of Jiva, and the Jiva is the shelter of Adhyatmic, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik Purusha. Okay. Now, what are these three Purushas? Adhyatmic, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik. Now, who are these three Purushas, and what is their connection with the 10 topics? So it might be a little confusing if you read these verses just after the explanation of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam, but we'll try to explain this. Now, The way we need to explain this, that these Adhi Adhyatmik Purusha, Adhi Daivik Purusha, and Adhi Bhautik Purusha. So the word Purusha here means the enjoyer. And who is mentioned as the enjoyer here when we talk about Purusha? The enjoyer is the Jiva. Jiva is actually not the enjoyer. Jiva is only the Prakriti or the energy of the Lord. But Jiva in the conditioned state is the consider himself as the enjoyer. So why he consider himself as the enjoyer? Because of the three coverings on the Jiva. So this is the covering. The covering on the Jiva known as the subtle sense organ. And then is not different from the presiding deities of the senses. And the sense deity is not different from the gross organ. So there are three things mentioned here: subtle sense organ, then the presiding deities of the senses, and the gross organ. Does that rekindle anything in you? Any rekindle your memories from the past discussion? Subtle sense organ, gross sense organ, and the sense deities, the deities of the senses. What does it
Yes.
mean? Yeah, please tell me.
Yes, you explained in, I think, earlier chapters about the creation. Like, I don't remember the exact words.
No
Like,
problem.
there was Drishya, and the deity. I'm not
No,
able to recollect.
there was gross sense organ. Gross sense organ means the eyes that
Like
you
the
see.
eyes.
The eyes, for
Yes,
example, let us
yes,
limit it to eyes. And there is
yeah.
a subtle sense organ. What is the
Subtle,
the subtle eye?
the subtle eyes. Yes.
Subtle eye means what? The capability to see.
Drishti. Yeah.
The chakshu.
Chakshu. Yeah.
Chakshu. We call it chakshu, right?
Yeah.
And then akshini. For eyes we call it akshini. For the subtle
Yes.
sense we call it chakshu. So subtle
Yes.
sense means the capability to see. So sometimes
Yes.
in blind people, we see that they are given the eyes, but they don't have the capability to see.
Yes.
So gross sense organ, subtle sense organ, and then for each sense organ, there is a deity, there is a devata who
Yes.
controls it.
Like sun god.
Like
Sun
for
god.
example, for eyes, it is sun, Surya.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point here is there is a covering on the jiva known as the Adhyatmik Purusha. And this covering is no different from the Adi Daivik Purusha. And this Adi Daivik Purusha covering is no different from the Adi Bhautik Purusha. Adi Bhautik Purusha means, so the Jiva actually is what? Jiva is the spirit soul, the Atma.
Yes.
And on the Atma, there is a gross body.
Yes.
Also, on the Atma, there is a subtle senses, which is covering the Atma. And although it is not perceivable, but even more subtler is that because the subtle senses are being controlled by the deities, the deities are also a kind of a covering on the Atma. So all 3 points clear, how they are covering.
Yes.
So the covering on the Jiva known as the subtle sense organ, and then the presiding deities of the senses, and the gross organ. So these are the 3 coverings. And then what it is saying is that all these 3 coverings are non-different. All these coverings are non-different. Now, what does it mean by non-different? Non-different in terms of the purpose. The purpose is to provide enjoyment to the jiva. See, with senses, what are we trying to do?
We sense the world.
We sense the world mainly for what purpose? Mainly for our enjoyment. For our enjoyment. And that is why here the word Purusha has been used. So actually the senses given to the jiva are all by the Lord himself. So he is the owner of the senses. He's the master of the senses. Rishikesha. He's the master of the senses. So the senses belong to him, but the jiva misidentifies. He thinks that he is the enjoyer, and that is why he's saying, it is being mentioned here, is that he uses this covering, the Adi Bhautik covering, the Adhyatmika covering, and the Adi Daivika covering. Adi Bhautik covering means the covering of the gross body. Adhyatmika covering means the covering of the subtle senses. Subtle senses, as I mentioned, chakshu, the capability to see. And then the even more subtler is the the deities, the presiding deities of the senses. That is known as Adi Daivik Purusha.
Yeah.
Okay. Why they are non-different? They are non-different because the purpose of all three is mainly to provide enjoyment to the jiva. In terms of the purpose of them, of these three Purushas, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik, their all purpose is to give enjoyment to the jiva, and in that sense they are non-different. So
Okay.
I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Okay. Others also in the class, is it clear?
Yes,
Does that
Prabhu.
make sense? Okay, good. Now we go to the ninth one. So ninth one. Okay, please read.
Since we cannot perceive one item in absence of other, and the other item, like subtle sense deity, and gross form, he who is independent of these three is the Atma. But the shelter of Atma is the Paramatma.
Now that is what I gave you the understanding right in the beginning. Paramatma is the shelter of Atma, and
Yeah.
Atma is shelter of all the three. The subtle senses.
Yeah.
Subtle senses means Adhyatmika. Sense deity means the Adi. Which one? Adi
David.
Devika. And gross form is Adi Bhautik.
Bhautik.
Bhautik, right? So that hierarchy is clear. Paramatma, then Atma, and then these three, 1, 2, and 3. So that is the
Yes.
kind of hierarchy. Now, what another important point is, since we cannot perceive one item in the absence of one of the other item.
Yes. Yes.
Now, there are three items here. What are the three? Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik. These are the three items. What this is saying is, we cannot perceive one item in the absence of the another item. What it's trying to say is that all three items actually are interdependent on each other.
Relative word, yes.
Interdependent. If one doesn't function, the other two doesn't function at all. Like for example, if I desire to see a movie, and somehow my eyes are not functioning well, maybe there is some disease, maybe there is some damage, etc., and it is not working properly, then does it matter if my subtle sense chakshu is working properly and the sense devatas are okay? The sense devata and the subtle sense cannot work if my gross eye organ doesn't work properly. Is that point clear?
Yes.
If the subtle sense organ doesn't work, then the gross eye and the sense devata cannot actually help anything, isn't it?
Yes.
And
yes.
if the sun deity, say for example, there is no light, there's all darkness, can my subtle senses, sense of eye, subtle eye and my gross eye, does that help? If the sun deity actually goes on vacation, doesn't provide any light, isn't it? So that is the point of interdependence. Since we cannot perceive one item in absence of the another item. What are the other items? Subtle sense, sense deity, and gross item. So one will not function if the only one doesn't function, then the other two cannot function.
Now, Prabhuji, perceiving and functioning are two different words. So
now if there is complete darkness, like for example, if there is complete darkness, now my gross eye, although it is okay, and my subtle eye is also okay, I cannot see.
So perceiving in the sense, like you're trying to tell us, perceiving means to perceive the world.
Yeah, I mean the function is not there. The function is not happening. Even if some object is lying next to me, I cannot see that object just because there is no light.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Okay.
And all these three are dependent on Atma. What does it mean? Now, if the Atma leaves the body, then what good use is this body? Maybe the eye is there, then the subtle eye is there, and then the sense deity is also there. But the three cannot work. The three cannot work. If the soul decides to leave the body, then the three other work. So all these three are dependent on the Atma. Only when the Atma is there, then only the three will function. Right? And this Atma is dependent on what? The Paramatma.
Yes.
This Atma is dependent on Paramatma. Okay, so is this Atma absolutely independent? No, Atma is dependent on Paramatma. So if you look at this verse number 9, in case you have Bhagavatam open in front of you, so there is a word at the end of the verse which is used as Sarvashraya Ashraya. Sarva Ashraya, Swa Ashraya Ashraya, not Sarvashraya, Swa Ashraya Ashraya. So do you see that word? Do you see that? Swa
Should
Ashraya
we open
Ashraya.
the text?
If you can
Should we
open
open
it,
the text?
if you can open it in your mobiles,
Yeah.
the word used in the end of this verse is Swa Ashraya Ashraya. This is important because Ashraya actually is Ashraya is used as the for Atma.
Okay.
And Swa Ashraya is used for Paramatma. Swa Ashraya is used as Paramatma. So Swa Ashraya Ashraya. Swa Ashraya actually is meant for the Lord. He is the Ashraya of himself. There is no other Ashraya for the Lord. Swa Ashraya Ashraya. Is that clear?
Yes.
So that is how we need to understand. So all the salient points of the words of the verses 8 and 9 I have explained here. How from the verses 1 to 7, at the 7th verse, the Ashraya Tattva has been explained in brief, and how Ashraya Tattva has been expanded, that it is also known as Paramatma, it is also known as Parabrahma. And then in verse number 8th and 9th, what has been mentioned is that the Paramatma is the Ashraya of the Jiva, and the Jiva is the Ashraya of the other three coverings, which is Adhyatmik, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik. So ultimately, what it is trying to say is, in these sections, subsequent sections after the first 7 verses, that Lord is actually the Ashraya of everything. That is what the main message he will give. Shukdev Goswami is going to explain. So I hope till this point it is clear to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you look at the purports and the translations of Srila Prabhupada, there is a slight difference. There is a slight difference. Here, whatever translations I am being taking here is from the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. If you look at the translations of Srila Prabhupada, here Adhyatmik Purusha. Adhyatmik Purusha in the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation has been described as subtle sense organ. Adhyatmik Purusha has been described as the subtle sense organ. But in the Prabhupada's translation, the Adhyatmik Purusha has been described as the Jiva, the soul. So I did not go into a lot of detail between the why the difference in explanation by Prabhupada's verses and purport. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation actually also matches with the explanation that we had given earlier in the creation also. So that is why I have restricted mainly to the description given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But for our understanding, I hope that explains well. So
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that Adhyatmik means subtle sense organs, but Prabhupada is saying Adhyatmik means directly the Jiva, the Atman.
Directly the Jiva. Directly the Jiva. Now, why I picked up the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation mainly is, so Adi Devik we explained in the previous, you remember this table we discussed when we were discussing creation? From
Yes.
Mahavishnu comes
Yes, I was
Pradhana, and then
referring to this table only.
right.
And
So
yeah.
Adi Devik. So Adi Devik is mainly referring to the from Jnana Shakti, which is Adi Devik, which is referring to the sense devatas, the 10 sense devatas. Adhyatmik is mainly referring to the senses, subtle senses.
Yes.
And then the Adi Bhautik is mainly referring to the gross senses and the sense objects.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the word Purusha indicates Atman only.
The word Purusha is mainly the Jiva, the conditioned Jiva who is thinking himself as the enjoyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we go to the 10th verse. Now the topic is changing. The theme is changing. So previously the theme was the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now here Shukdev Goswami will further expand how the Sarga or the creation of Virat Roop as answered to the Parikshit Maharaj question number uh, in the 11th verse of the 8th chapter. So you remember in the 8th chapter there's a long list of questions Parikshit Maharaj gives. You remember that?
I don't remember the questions.
No, you don't remember the question, but there was a long list, a long question
Yes.
paper was given. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
So in that the 11th verse asked about a particular question, and that question is here in this table. I've brought back that slide here.
Okay.
So that question is, I have heard that the planets and their governors are imagined as the limbs of the Virat Purusha. Please explain more details.
Yeah.
So if you read this question, he is asking more about the explanation of the Virat Purusha, more details. That the planets and their governors are imagined as the limb of the Virat Purusha. So like we understood that the Brahma Loka was the head of the Virat Purusha, and the lower lokas were something like the feet of the Virat Purusha, the legs of the Virat Purusha, like that.
Yes.
So what Parikshit Maharaj was saying is, please explain more details.
Okay.
Now that is what Shukdev Goswami starts to explain now, in order to further explain the Ashraya Tattva, that actually if you see that the Virat Purusha is the Ashraya. Virat Purusha you may consider as the Lord himself, and the Virat Purusha actually the source of everything. Source of everything. So what you will find is creation of Virat Rupa, answer to Parikshit Maharaj question he asked in 8th chapter 11th verse. So please read this verse, Mataji.
Yes. When the pure Purusha, separating himself from the universe, remained outside, desiring a place to lie down in the universe, he created the pure waters of Garbhodaka.
So you already have learned this creation process in the previous chapters. Again, the same creation process will be explained in this chapter. So what was the creation process? Mahavishnu, he's lying on the Karnodakshai ocean, and then Karna ocean, and then from his pores, bodily pores, the universe starts to emanate, and then this Mahavishnu enters into each of these universes, and then create from his body the water or the sweat. He fills he's looking for some place to live in this universe that he has created, and then fill this universe half with the sweat of his body, and then lie down in this ocean, and so on, like that. So all that creation you have already read.
Yes.
Now again the same thing will be repeated, but now the whole process of creation will be described in a different way.
Okay.
It is coming in the third time in the canto number 2. The process, the description of Virat Purusha, or the mention of the subject matter of Virat Purusha, is coming for the third time in canto number 2. Do you remember when was the first time when it came?
No.
Okay. It came, if you remember, in the first chapter of the second canto, we were discussing about the object of meditation of a neophyte devotee, neophyte yogi.
Now I remember.
Neophyte yogi. So what is the object of meditation of neophyte yogi? Is the Virat Purusha.
Yes.
Is the Virat Rupa. And that's where the description came, that the neophyte devotee, or not devotee, neophyte yogi, actually neophyte Ashtang yogi, needs something to meditate upon, and then he looks at the universe and consider it as the body of the Lord. He sees the mountain as the bones, he sees the rivers as the veins, he sees the trees at the hair of the body, and so on and so forth. So that was the first time the description of Virat Purusha came. The objective of the description was mainly to explain the object of meditation of a neophyte yogi.
Yes.
Is that clear?
Yes.
The second time also the description of Virat Purusha came. And when it came second time in the chapter number 5 and 6, when we discussed about the creation.
Yes.
And what did we do? We understood that the Mahavishnu creates the universes, enters into the universes, and when he enters into the universes, a lotus stem came out from his navel, and then on
Yeah.
the lotus, Lord Brahma is born, and then he also creates the 14 planetary system on the stem of the lotus, right? And then
Yeah.
we were told that this 14 planetary system can be considered or imagined as the Virat Purusha.
Yes.
So you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So second time when this description of Virat Purusha came, the objective was different. First time it was the object of meditation of a neophyte devotee, neophyte yogi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second time it came was to explain that the Lord is both the material cause and the effective cause.
Okay.
Material cause and effective cause. And I gave you the analogy. Like for example, a potter who's creating a
Yeah.
clay pot.
Yes. Yes.
So he needs ingredients, material.
Yeah.
He needs
Yeah.
clay, he needs water, he needs a wheel, he needs a
Yeah.
stick to rotate the
Yes.
wheel. So
Yeah.
these are the ingredients.
Yeah.
But the potter himself, uh, unless he rotate the wheel, unless he makes that effort, he cannot create the pot.
Mm.
So the
Mm.
potter actually is the effective cause, and
Mm.
the material are the material cause.
Yeah.
So here we told, second time when we had this discussion of Virat Purusha, we told that Lord is uh, both the material cause as well as the effective cause.
Right.
Material cause as well as the effective cause. So the
Mm.
Lord provides the material also, creates the material also, and he actually enters into these material. Uh, he give rise to Lord Brahma, whom
Mm.
he instructs further to make the creation and do everything. So that is how the Lord is both the material cause as well as the effective cause.
Mm.
So that is was the objective of the second time when the discussion about Virat Purusha came.
Mm.
Right, Mataji? Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now the third time this description is now coming. The third time this description is now coming. Now the objective is also different. The objective is that how desires shape our gross and subtle body. How desires shape our gross and subtle body. So you will see in this explanation that this Virat Purusha had a desire to eat.
Okay.
And when the Virat Purusha had a desire to eat, uh, then came the
Mouth was
tongue. Then
created.
came the,
Yeah.
then the mouth was created.
Mm.
And in the mouth, that the palate. The palate means
Yeah.
the tongue. The
Yeah.
palate means the tongue. Tongue means the talu got created.
Okay.
And when the talu was created, at the same time, the subtle sense organ, which is jivva, and the sense devata, the deity, the Varuna also simultaneously got created.
Okay.
Like that, he's giving this explanation once again just to elaborate upon this point that how desires shape our gross and subtle body. So when the Virat Purusha desires something, then only these things get created.
Okay.
Then only these things get created. So ultimately, uh, if we are
So why
having this,
would Virat Purusha desire anything?
I mean, why would Virat Purusha desire anything? We need to
Because
check
we
with
have
Virat
been
Purusha.
reading like Virat Purusha, the Paramatma, or Krishna is ever satisfied.
Yeah. See, the idea is he's saying that when the creation happened, when the
Yeah.
creation happened, uh, so unless the Lord
Mm.
desires, the living entity cannot desire. That is what
Okay.
that is what being trying to explain here.
Okay.
So how desires shape our gross and subtle bodies. Like when we
Mhm.
desire something, when we have desires, then it gives rise to our subtle body and our gross body. So
Mm.
similarly, when the Virat Purusha desires, then only these different sense organs, the subtle sense organ, and then the deities get created. That is what it is trying to say. So the whole process of creation, which you already know
Mm.
by virtue of our study of chapter 5 and 6, is now given an explanation in a different way in this 10th canto, in this 10th chapter.
Can I tell you the 3 objectives of the same topic?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the first one, the objective was the object of meditation of a neophyte yogi.
Correct.
The second mention of the same topic explained us the material and the effective cause of creation.
Correct.
And the third is like when the Lord desires or the Virat Purusha desires, then creation happens.
Then creation happens, or in other words, you can say that how desires shape our gross and subtle bodies.
Okay.
So when the Lord desires, then it shapes the gross and subtle body of the Virat Purusha itself, because the Virat Purusha gets its talu when he desires to eat.
Okay.
When he desires to eat, he gets this. Before that,
and the Virat Purusha has all the limbs, which are nothing but the planetary systems of the universe.
Yeah. So Virat Purusha desire to eat, then the talu appears, then the jiva appears, and the presiding deity of the sense devata also appears.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the objective. Now we start to read this creation process. We will now move fast. If all these points are explained, are understood to you well, now we can move a little fast. Yeah, please read.
But Prabhu, this is a cumulative process that you mean to say, starting from neophyte and then Virat, the material ingredients, and now the desires.
No, it is not a cumulative process. The point is, every time in second canto, the description or the mention of Virat Purusha comes, it is for a different cause. If it is for a different reason. First time, Shukdev Goswami is explaining how Ashtanga Yoga process is there, and he is explaining what is the object of meditation of a neophyte yogi, and that's where he brings this discussion of Virat Purusha.
Okay, neophyte but yogi, that time when the Virat Purusha is there, that time he doesn't have these desires or something, for it is just like
no. It is simply to tell that the neophyte yogi meditates upon Virat Purusha.
Okay.
He sees this universe as the body of the Lord. He sees the mountains as the bones, the rivers as the veins, and then the hairs and the trees as the hair, and then many more descriptions are there. So if he looks at the mountain, he should meditate, oh, I'm looking at the bones of the Lord. If he looks at the river, he thinks that, okay, I'm looking at the veins of the Lord, like that.
Okay.
So that is mainly to facilitate his meditation, to further advance. That is the objective the first time the description comes. Second time the description comes is how everything, how the Lord is the material cause and the effective cause. So in order to explain that, this whole thing was discussed.
Yeah. That is very well understood, Prabhu. This is the potter example and everything, correct?
Right. So that is where the Virat Purusha explanation came. And then now the Virat Purusha explanation is coming again in the context of creation, but it is telling that when the Virat Purusha desires, the emphasis here is on the desires. When he desires, then only he gets the various organs in the body of the Virat Purusha.
So this is one different aspect of the Virat Purusha. That is what we can understand this way.
Yeah. So the idea is, Prabhu, you remember in this chapter we are discussing about the ashraya.
Yeah.
Ashraya means that the Lord is the shelter of everything.
Okay.
When the Lord desires, only then things happen. Unless the Lord doesn't have that desire, we cannot function. We cannot function. So ultimately, the link is mainly to the Ashraya Tattva, and then in terms of the whole process of creation has been explained here, and at the same time he's answering the question, 11th question of Parikshit Maharaj that was asked in the chapter number 8.
Okay, clear, Prabhu. Yeah.
Clear, Prabhu? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, please read this, Vrindavaneshwari Mataji.
Yeah, I think I've read it, but I'll read
you
again.
Have read it. Okay.
Yes.
So when the pure Purusha, separating himself from the universe, remained outside, desiring a place to lie down in the universe, he created the pure waters of the Garbhodaka. So he's the Purusha Mahavishnu residing outside. He creates the universe here. He doesn't find a place to reside here. He fills the water of the universe with the sweat of his body. That is mentioned here as the pure water. And then he lies down on Anant Shesha in that pure water. So the water has been mentioned here as the pure water. Okay, it is not something like we need to understand like maybe H2O that we see normally in our case. The sweat, because the Lord is pure, the sweat emanating from the body of the Lord is also pure. He created the pure waters of the Garbhotaka. Okay. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary mentions here one very beautiful point. He says that why again this topic of Virat Purusha? Why not we are discussing about Leela Katha of the Lord? Leela Katha is very entertaining, very pure, very satisfying, and so on. Why again and again this topic of Virat Purusha is coming? So, in order to explain that, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that people of the audience of Srimad Bhagavatam is of two categories. One is the pure devotees who are Nitya Siddhas or who have already purified their existence by doing maybe sadhana bhakti, so on. But the others are those devotees who have not reached that level, who are still in the conditioned state. So, for those people who are in the conditioned state, the Leela Katha may not be relished as much. If you tell them the Leela Katha, they start to question. I mean, why Govardhan Hill? How can somebody lift the Govardhan Hill on the pinky finger? Why Krishna? How a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old could kill such a big demon and all that? So all that questioning comes in the mind of the conditioned soul. If you directly go to the 10th chapter, but if you tell them the topic which are related to Maya, people who are sleeping in Maya can only be waken up by describing topic of Maya in relation to the Lord. Now, Maya here does not mean any prajalpa or any nonsense talks. Maya in relation to the Lord means all the material creation that the Lord did, or the material opulences of the Lord, the Aishwarya of the Lord. So the conditioned souls are very much attracted to the Aishwarya. If they see something very great, something very opulent, something very magnificent, they really get attracted to it. So the conditioned souls can only understand the Lord better if the topics of creation or the topic related to Maya in relation to the Lord are discussed with them. So that is what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport mentions that. So that is what I felt that maybe worthwhile to share. That was a very beautiful point here. And then he created pure waters. Pure waters means like transcendental water. And the body of the Lord is pure. So the sweat coming out from the body of the Lord is also very pure. That is the constituent of the Garbhodaka ocean. So I hope that is clear, right? We move to the next one. So this is the question that was asked in the eighth chapter. So we now go to the 11th one. So Manishji, would you like to read?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. He dwelt from many years in that water created from himself. Because of that, he is called Narayana, since the waters Nara arose from the Purusha Nara.
Now here you will find one reason why. What does Narayana mean? So he dwelt for many years in that water, created for himself. So he's the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, lying down in the Garbhodaka ocean, and his name is Narayana. Narayana means what? So the water is known as Nara. Nara. Why it is known as Nara? Because it is coming from a Nara. Nara means the Supreme Lord. So the word Nara means the water which is coming from the body of the Lord. Nara. So since the water Nara arose from the Purusha, which is Nara, and Ayana means resting place. So that is why Narayana. Narayana. Ayana means the resting place. Nara actually means that water which has come from the body of the Lord. So that is why it is known as Narayana. Okay, is it clear, Prabhu?
Yes.
Okay, now we move to the the 12th one. Okay, please read.
By connection with the Lord, Dravya Karma, Kala Swabhava and the Jivas can produce effects. Without his presence, they have no effect.
Now, if you see here, if you go here, uh, he's in those waters, and then the next verse is saying about by connection with the Lord, Dravya, Karma, Kal, Swabhav, and the Jivas can produce effect. Without his presence, they have no effect. Ultimately, again, that same thing, that everything that the Lord, everything that we see in this universe actually is only because the Lord is sustaining it, the Lord is supporting it. Like, for example, we say sugar is sweet, water is liquid, salt is salty. Yeah. So we find different things in this world. So what does it mean? Why the sugar is sweet? Why water is fluid? Why salt is salty? It is mainly because the Lord is present in the sugar. The Lord is present in the fluid, the water. The Lord is also in between the molecules and the atoms of the salt. Only because the Lord is there, each individual element or each individual uh, material that we see in this world has some characteristic. Sugar is sweet mainly because the Lord enables the sugar to produce sweetness. Salt is salty mainly because the Lord enables it to produce it salty, to make it like that. So that is how we need to understand. By connection with the Lord, Dravya, Karma, Kala, Swabhava, and the Jivas can produce effects. Without his presence, they have no effect. Ultimately, the point is the same, Ashraya. We discussed about the Ashraya in the 7th verse, and the same thing is being mentioned here. So the Lord is the Ashraya of everything, like that. Okay, 13th Prabhu, please read.
The one Lord, desiring to become many, rose from his bed after sleep of universal destruction and created the universe, shining brightly in three forms by his energy.
Now, so he is there in the Garbhodaka ocean, and then he talks about the one Lord desiring to become many rose from his bed. So the Lord actually went to sleep, Yog Nidra, while he was in the Garbhodaka ocean. Now the material nature comes and then say that, Lord, my dear Lord, it's time for creation, kindly wake up. And then the Lord wakes up, glances at the Prakriti, and then the creation process starts. And then when the creation process starts, the lotus stem emanates uh, from the navel of the Lord, and then on that lotus stem, the 14 planetary systems are created, and then Brahmaji also get birth on the lotus, and so on. So the one Lord desiring to become many. Desiring to become many means the living entities are there already in the body of the Lord. So it is not that the Lord actually expanded himself into many living entities. The living entities from the previous creation were already there in the body of the Lord, existing separately from the Lord. And then these living entities actually now become manifest. They come out from the body of the Lord, and then the creation process happens. The lotus comes, and then the 14 planetary systems are there, and then the Brahmaji is also there. And then created the universe shining brightly in three forms of his energy. Three forms of his energy. So the creation has three aspects. And what are those three aspects is mentioned here in the 14th one. Please read.
Yeah. The Lord created three forms. Adhidaivam, controlling entities, Adhyatmam, controlled entities, and Adhibhutam, gross sense form.
So we discussed
Gross
this.
sense form.
Gross sense form. So he created three forms. In the universe that the creation he did three things, three energies, three mainly. The energy can be classified into three aspects. Adhidaivam. Adhidaivam are whom? The controlling entities. Controlling entities are whom? The sense devatas. The sense devatas, right? Like Surya, and then Adhyatmam. Adhyatmam means the subtle senses, the controlled entities. So these controlling entities are controlling whom? The subtle sense organ, like for example, the chakshu, the subtle eye. And then ultimately the Adi Bhutam is the gross sense form, which is the material bodies. So he creates the devatas, he creates the subtle senses, he creates the gross bodies. So is that clear?
Yes, yes,
Manishji?
Prabhu.
Is that clear?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
We go to the 15th one. Okay.
From the ether within the body of the universal form, who was acting in various ways, arose the Shaktis of the senses, mind, and body, and from them arose the best life air called Sutra.
Sutra. Now you understand that, okay, all these three the Shaktis, the material energy has been created, and this material energy has three aspects: Adhyatmik, Adi Daivik, and Adi Bhautik. And then from the ether within the body of the universal form, so the Virat Purusha. So Virat Purusha means that now the 14 planetary system, that Virat Purusha, within the body of that universal form, who was acting in various ways, arose the Shaktis of the senses, mind, and body, and from them arose the best life air called Sutra. Sutra. So in this Virat Purusha, there is a Prana Shakti came, which is known as Sutra, Prana Shakti. So Prana Shakti is also there within our bodies. So with the Prana Shakti, we get strength to our senses, we get strength to our mind, and so on. So this Prana Shakti is mainly driving our bodies, our lives. Similarly, this Prana Shakti appears in this Virat Purusha, and that is known as Sutra. So this Sutra part is also was discussed in the 5th chapter. Let me show you this. So you remember this table: Mahavishnu, then Pradhana, then Mahat-Tattva in Sattva,
Yes.
and Mahat-Tattva in Rajas. So this
Sutra.
Mahat-Tattva in Rajas is also known as Sutra Tattva. Is also known as Sutra Tattva. So that is what is being mentioned here in the 15th verse, that all those Shaktis, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, also at the same time arose this Prana Shakti, which is known as Sutra. Now comes the so this Prana Shakti, as I mentioned, gives strength to our senses, our mind, our body. If our Prana Shakti is low, we don't feel very energetic. Like for example, on the fasting day, when we do vrata, when we do fasting, when we don't have much food, our Prana Shakti becomes lower, weaker. And that is why our senses become weaker, our mind becomes weaker, our body becomes weaker, like that. So equivalent to Prana Shakti in our body, in the Virat Purusha body, the Prana Shakti name is known as Sutra. Is that clear, Maniji?
Yes.
Okay. Now we move to the 16th one.
Yeah. The senses become active following after the action of Sutra and become inactive when the Sutra becomes inactive, just as servants follow after a king.
Okay, the same thing which I just mentioned. When the Prana Shakti within us is weak, then our senses also become weak, our mind also become weak, our body also become weak. When the Prana Shakti is strong, the mind, body, and senses are strong. Just like analogy is given us, just as the servant is following the king. So if the king is very energetic, the servants remain energetic. If the king is not very energetic, is kind of down or less active or maybe less energetic, the servants also don't feel energetic, right? So the same thing is mentioned here. The senses become active following after the action of the sutra and become inactive when the sutra becomes inactive. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay, now we go to the 17th.
Being simulated by the sutra, hunger and thirst appeared within the universal form. He desired to drink and eat. First, the mouth became distinct.
Now here comes that creation part. Different things that will now come manifest. So being simulated by the sutra, hunger and thirst appeared within the universal form. So because of that prana shakti, which is known as sutra, or which is the mahat tattva in the mode of rajas, then he desires to drink and eat. He has this desire now. And then when he has the desire to drink and eat, the mouth becomes distinct. Then the mouth comes. Here, how you can see that how that when the desire in the Virat Purusha is there, then only this creation is happening. The mouth is appearing. Is it clear, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the main part here. Our desires shape our gross body and the subtle body. So like the desires of Virat Purusha shapes up the subtle body and the gross body of the Virat Purusha, similarly the desires within the living entity also creates the subtle body and the gross body. If we have desire to eat meat, our subtle body will be like that, and our gross body also will be like that. The nature will give us the body of a tiger. So that is the idea. Now comes the 18th.
After the appearance of the mouth, the palate became differentiated, and on the palate, the tongue appeared. From that, various tastes which are experienced by the tongue were generated.
Okay. So what is being mentioned after the appearance of the mouth? So the location is now there. Now the palate can come. Palate means the talu. So this gross tongue that you see in your mouth or in others' mouth, that gross tongue is known as talu. This is the gross sense organ, which you can actually experience, which you can touch and so on. Became differentiated, and on that palate the tongue appeared. On that palate the tongue appeared. Tongue means the jivva. Jivva is the subtle sense organ. And from that the various tastes which are experienced by the tongue. Various tastes. So taste is the sense object. Sense object is the taste. So sense organ is the tongue, the sense object is the taste, and the subtle sense organ is the jivva. So talu, jivva, and the sense object has appeared, which are experienced by the tongue were generated. Now here you will notice that the mention of sense devata is not there. Sense devata of the tongue is, or the palate is Varuna, Adi Devik. So here you can see the three aspects are there. Palate is which? Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, or Adhyatmik. Which one is this palate? Gross.
I think this is Adi Devik only.
Palate, the gross.
It is the gross.
What is that?
Gross is tongue.
But what is Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, Adhyatmik? Which one is it?
Adhyatmik. Bhautik will be tongue, correct, Prabhu?
Bhautik. It is Adi Bhautik.
Yes.
Adi Bhautik.
And rasa is tanmatra. No?
Rasa is the tanmatra. That is also Adi Bhautik.
That is also Adi Bhautik. Okay.
Correct?
Then palate is Adi Devik.
Adi Bhautik. Palate and the
tongue, both.
Palate and taste, both are Adi Bhautik. And tongue, tongue is what? Adhyatmik.
Huh?
Tongue is Adhyatmik, subtle sense organ, Sukshma Indriya.
And what is the Sthul Indriya for tongue?
Sthul Indriya is the palate.
Okay, then this is Adi Bhautik, no?
The talu. Palate is Adi Bhautik.
So this is Adi Bhautik, and tongue is Adi Adhyatmik, and taste
is also Adi Bhautik.
Adi Bhautik. Okay.
The devata is not mentioned here, Varuna, which is Adi Daivik, which is Adi Daivik.
Okay.
Which is Adi Daivik. So the four elements have been classified in three parts. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Now, before we explain the verse number 19 to 30, if you understand this procedure, which we just now discussed in 18th, then the verse number 19, 20 to 30th will be very clear to you. We will not go into the detail of those verses. Simply by the help of a table, I will explain them. But if you read Bhagavatam, they are very simple, straightforward. So Virat Rupa desire to eat and speak. Then the gross sense organ appear. That is what you see just now. He desired to eat. Then the face appeared, and in the face the palate, the talu appeared. The gross sense organ appeared, which is Adi Bhuta. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when the gross sense organ appeared, at the same time, two things happen. The subtle sense organ and the sense devta also appear.
Yeah.
Adi Daiva.
So sense devta is Adi Deva, and subtle sense organ is Adhi. The subtle sense organ is Adhyatma. Although I forgot to write it here, the subtle sense organ is Adhyatma. Sense devta is Adi Deva. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then comes the Tanmatra, the sense object, which is Adi Bhuta. And in terms of this happens in for Gyan Indriyas, for Karma Indriyas, it is the bodily activity that happens.
So one Adi Bhuta is created earlier than the other. Then the Tanmatra comes the last. This is in sequence.
That is how the sequence of
Okay.
events being mentioned here.
Okay.
Adi Bhuta, at the same time comes the Adhyatma and Adi Daiva, and then comes the Tanmatra, which is also Adi Bhuta. And in case of you see the Karmendriyas, it is the bodily activity. Like for example, speech, Vani.
Yeah. So this table also explains, Prabhu, that everything is actually dependent on
Virat
Krishna.
Rupa.
Yeah.
Virat Rupa. So Virat Rupa is here, you can say that it is actually only the Lord himself. That is the Virat Purusha. So Virat Purusha desiring means the Lord is desiring. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we go to the verse number 19 onwards. Verse number 19 onwards. So we shared this table earlier also.
Yeah.
Earlier also when we discussed this table, we discussed it like that only. But last time when we discussed, it was in chapter number 5 and 6. Rather chapter number 6 when we discussed this. There in chapter number 6, this Lord desire part was not there. The only thing was the gross sense organ, the subtle sense organ, the sense devatas, and the sense object in the gross element. That's how we discussed when we discussed in the chapter number 6. But now the Lord desire also has been added here.
Okay.
Okay. So just now we discuss verse number 18, right?
Yes.
So to drink and eat, the gross sense organ appears, then the subtle sense organ appears, the sense devata appear, and then together with it, the sense object and the gross element also appear, the taste and the water. Okay. Now maybe we can continue like this. So 19 we can discuss in the next slide, but here in the 20th it is about smell. Nasika, Grhana, Ashwini Kumaras, smell and earth. Then 21st, to see himself and other objects. Akshini, Chakshu, Surya, form, fire. Then 22nd, to understand himself through Vedic sound. So that is the desire. That is the desire, to understand himself through the Vedic sound. Karna, Shrotra, Dig Devtas, sound and ether. Here the desire also specifically is important. The desire is mainly to understand himself. So what he's trying to say is that our ears actually are meant for understanding the Lord. And like that. So here to experience softness, hardness, heat, cold, heavy and light object, then comes the skin, twak, twachi, twak, vayu, touch and air. So you can see here the table has been done in a way that all the Gyan Indriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, are grouped here together. Is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Now we go to the next one. Here you will find that the Karmendriyas are also there. Like for example, to speak and then to perform activities with the hands, to move about with the legs, to have progeny, which is referring to the genitals, and then to expel waste, which is the Gudadwar. So like that, 27, 26, 24, 19, and 25. 25, 26, 27, and then 19 and 24. These are karmendriyas. So in the karmendriyas, we don't have the sense object and the gross element. We have the activity. Okay. Inserted in between are also to experience sensation. Tvachi, sorry. Yeah. Here, Roma, Mahiruha, and external itching plus touch sensation. So this is to experience sensation. We have gross sense organ of hair. So like, for example, when the wind blows, our hair kind of tells us that wind is blowing. And then we have Nabhi, to change the body. Nabhi, the navel, and then the Apan Pranavayus, and then the activity is death. When the Virat Purusha want to change the body, desire to change the body, then this is what happens. And then remaining 29 and 30th. So I think we have covered 28th till 28th here, and then the 29th and 30th. If we have the desire to consume food means a digestion. Then we have Kukshi, which is abdomen, and then we have Antarani, part of the intestine that absorb the food. Then we have the sense devta called as Samudra. And the activity is satisfaction from filled stomach. Similarly, if we want to consume a drink, then again the abdomen is there, Kukshi. But this time it is not Antarani, it is Nadyas. Nadyas are the veins which drink in the intestine. So our intestine may be filled with some veins. I don't know. Maybe the doctors in the class might tell us. And then the sense devta is the Nadya. Nadya is the devta of rivers and the veins. So nourishment from the assimilation of rasa. Similarly, to contemplate is Maya and its created objects, Hridayam, Manaha, Chandra, determination and desire. So the whole idea of this section here is mainly to elaborate on the Ashraya, which was mentioned in the verse number 7, and trying to say ultimately is the Lord of Ashraya of everything. When the Lord desires, then only we are able to do something. The living entity can see only when the Lord sees. The living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. That the idea that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. This independence in thinking is there by the grace of the Lord. But the thinking can be given shape by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, the common saying is that man proposes and God disposes. This is what Prabhupada writes in the purport of the verse number 20. So man proposes, God disposes. Unless and until there is a sanction of the Lord, the man cannot do anything. The man cannot do anything. That is the subject matter of the class today. I hope it was clear. It took me quite some time to understand, digest, and prepare for this. The last class I was not able to deliver mainly because I was not able to understand the verse number 8 and 9 because they were contradicting. Prabhupada's explanation and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation were contradicting, and I had to kind of reconcile what it is. So this is how I try to explain it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation matches a little bit with the way we explained it earlier. That is why I took those explanations and for the time being did not take explanation from Prabhupada's translation. But I hope overall this was able to go in your brain, in your mind, in your understanding. In case still you have any questions, we can discuss now. Thank you very much. Hare
Krishna. Please correct me if I'm wrong in understanding, Prabhuji. Like you said that everything is arising from Virat Purusha when he desires. And all the Purushas are actually taking shelter in Virat Purusha. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, what it is saying is that our source of everything is the Supreme Lord. Here, the aspect that has been mentioned or highlighted is that our desires are important. It works in the same way in the Lord also. When the Lord...
No. My question has not been completed, Prabhuji. I have understood that whenever he desires, everything else come into being. That I have understood. So I'm trying to understand, is the Virat Purusha same as Jiva?
No, Virat Purusha is not same as Jiva. Virat Purusha is an imaginary form of the Lord, which is the material universe, the whole planetary system imagined as the body of the Lord. So that is how it is. And then in this body of the Lord, we have different. So the palette of the Virat Purusha, the subtle sense organ of the Virat Purusha, and then he creates the devatas for controlling this, like that. So Jiva is not Virat Purusha.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other point? Any other question devotees may have? Mangala Mataji, is it digestible? Is it clear? Jayamala Mataji, you were organizing your festival or your event in the morning and you still managed to come to the class. Thank you for your enthusiasm.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question or any other? These are difficult topics. I can understand if everything doesn't go very crystal clear in our mind. These are topics of creation and all that, and many things are beyond our experience and all that. So, but we try to explain it to you as much as possible. The whole idea, if you can understand from this discussion, is that everything actually comes from the Lord. And if that realization sticks with us, we can try to dedicate ourselves in the service of the Lord by devotional service as much as possible, because our devotional service is mainly devotional service in practice. We don't have devotion in our heart. We are trying to reach that stage by acting like a devotee, like that. So, and how this chapter gives us this inspiration, because it tells us that everything actually comes from the Lord. Like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained, that those who are in Maya need to be explained in terms of Maya in relation to the Lord. Maya means the material creation. So if we relate that everything in this material creation actually is the mercy of the Lord to us, we can become God conscious, we can become devotees in the broader sense of the our objective. Yeah. That is the whole point of this 1 hour 20 minutes discussion.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Class was interesting.
Okay. Thank you, Mangala Mataji. Okay. So thank you very much. Then we close the discussion, and then we will meet once again for the final class. I hope there are no very difficult verses in the last part of the chapter 10, and we conclude it. After that, we will focus on the quiz. We'll prepare the quiz, and then we'll move to the third canto. Okay. So thank you very much for all your participation, support, and enthusiasm. And last but not the least, but a lot of feedbacks that we received earlier in the session today. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji. Very nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Rakesh ji. Hare Krishna.